This video contains content sponsored by John Wilson Blades and MK Blades. Opinions discussed in this video do not reflect the views of John Wilson or MK. Well, hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Jennifer Kirk.
And I'm Dave Lees, and we're thrilled to welcome back Phil Hersh. Phil, welcome to the skating lesson.
Thank you very much. It seems like 1,000 years already since Worlds.
I know. On to the next part. Well, let's go back and talk about Worlds. Just what are your general impressions, Phil, of the event now that we're a few weeks out of all that action?
Well, number one, I think Boston did a great job. It's clear that right now, at least for right now, with major events, Boston is figure skating's mecca in the United States. Just when you think the sport is kind of, gasping for breath, you get the Nationals in 2014, and you get this Worlds with great attendance and a really well-run event and some great skating on top of it. So it's encouraging. I mean, figure skating in the United States needed an event like this. Notwithstanding even the medal performance. I mean, the fact is that figure skating needed a well-run event with people showing up. I'm as a native Bostonian, I love the area around the Garden. You can walk over to the North End and get a meal. I saw somebody complain that the subway wasn't close enough. I mean, you take the train, you're right in North Station. I mean, so
yeah, how much closer can you get?
I think it looked like a great event, and you watch some of the vines and the other videos some of the skaters posted about walking through the public garden and the commons and on the Freedom Trail. It seemed like the skaters had a good time too. So all in all, I give Boston an A+. And now we can discuss the skating. So what would you like to talk about?
Well, I guess if you look at the skating events, what stood out to you at the World Championships this year?
Okay, so I was lots of individual pieces, but my great overriding impression was Yevgeny Medvedev had just an unbelievable competition. I mean, the more I saw those programs over the season, the more I liked them. You can see the same sort of choreography that Tutberidze used for Yulia Lipnitskaya, that were a little bit of a pose and to create a mood at the beginning and then getting into the skating. It was also really worked well for Yevgenia, who did not look to me like a 15 or 16-year-old kid. She looked like a more mature skater out there. And I think that was a great job of giving her a program that would allow her to look like a more mature skater. What else? Duhamel and Radford were brilliant. The Chinese pair in the short program, equally brilliant. It was interesting to see I'm losing my mind here. Aliana Savchenko with her new partner do so well. The Marceau, the French guy. They clearly have got a future. What else? Javier Fernandez's free skate was probably the greatest free skate in the history of figure skating. When you think about what he did technically and what he did as a showman out there, everything about that was just absolutely splendid. It's a shame. Would have been really interesting to see what would have happened, what the judges would have done if Yuzu had skated close to perfectly. And of course, Yuzu's short program was beyond brilliant. And then of course you've got the rest of the women's competition with Ashley giving the performance of her life in the free skate. Yeah, she made a couple of little errors, but has anybody ever sold a program any better than what she did out there? Looking back on it, I know my colleague Jack Gallagher in Japan was pretty upset about what happened to Satoko. As it turns out, I think where Satoko got hosed, which there's no way she should have been behind Gracie. I don't know how Pogarelaya skated really well. I think Pogarelaya probably deserved to be second or third, whichever way you want to put her. Satoko should have been fourth. And who would have bet? Remember, we were talking earlier, you guys have been talking all season about the classic falls that Anna has taken. What would the odds have been that she would have stayed on her skates for two programs for 6.5 minutes? Not very good.
Congratulations to her, because nobody expected that.
No, I mean, so the women's free skate was really, Yevgenia skated really well. Ashley skated really well. Satoko skated really well. There was some nice stuff. And then, of course, let's not forget about the young Russian guy, Kolyada, skated second in the short program. Nobody knew who he was. sometimes you put a guy like that in the last group and they're so nervous that they can't skate, but he skated wonderfully. So I mean, to me, he was kind of the revelation of the championships. What you saw from Javi was one of the great moments in skating. It was great to see Ashley get her due, and get that, finally break that drought. So overall, I mean, there was kind of something for everybody in that championships.
Well, Phil, let's talk about Ashley for a second, because obviously the big storyline here in the U.S. was her ability to break that drought. How is that going to impact skating in the U.S.? I mean, will it make a difference, in your opinion, over the next couple of years?
Unfortunately, I think you have to make a difference. You had to do it in the Olympics or to win the gold medal at this competition. Will there be more people interested in Ashley? Has Ashley's name recognition gone up a little bit? Absolutely. I think so. And Ashley is from our standpoint on the other side of the barrier, she's great to deal with. She'll say anything that comes into her head. She clearly is outspoken about important issues, whether it was gay rights in Sochi or anything else. So, I mean, her personality, she's kind of back to where she was right before the 2014 Nationals, when she was going to be the story. And then she had the difficult Nationals and not a particularly great Olympics and not a particularly great Worlds last year. But now I think, unless something dramatic happens, I think Ashley will be the story in the United States between here and the 2018 Winter Games in South Korea. It was just great. I mean, that was just great to see her do that. And then, of course, the funny little thing in the short program winding up on her butt when it ended. It was just a sort of a classic sort of Ashley moment, and the big smile. And then, of course, we have to talk about Gracie. And I noticed, I haven't paid tremendous attention to the Challenge Cup, but I did notice that she had a major bobble in the short program. She doubled down on a couple of jumps in the free skate. I mean, where does she go? How does she get her head straight to turn all that talent into what it can be? I was talking to Frank Carroll about it. I said, they've basically tried everything. I mean, she's gone to any number of sports psychologists. I suggested that that Frank get Evan into Gracie's head, because you think about, I believe that from 2005 on, that Evan was in, other than the 2006 Olympics, that Evan was on the podium in every event that he competed in, except also the 2007 Worlds. But a bad performance for Evan was fourth. So there's got to be some way that somebody with Evan's record can help maybe get into Gracie's head and give her the confidence that she needs to turn that ability into a medal at some point.
Well, how do you stack Ashley and Gracie up against the worlds going into the Olympics? And obviously, the last couple of Olympics, the story going in when all of the articles start coming out is that the Americans hadn't had a medalist. Do you see them as legitimate contenders for 2018? And how important is that for the coverage in the U.S. that we actually do have horses in the race?
Well, I think it'll be important for Gracie to get a medal next year at Worlds, because then you've got two legitimate contenders. I mean, think about Gracie's free skate, for which I think she was overscored a little bit, but let's put that aside. If she does not double that Lutz at the end of the program, that might have beaten Pogorelaya. I'm not sure. I mean, so she was right there, and she's been right there on a couple of occasions before. What, the United States, people in the United States, other than figure skating fans, start paying attention to the Olympics about a month in advance. So when nationals occur in 2018, and if the storylines going into nationals are Ashley having won 2 world medals in a row and maybe Gracie sneaking in and winning one, I think there'll be a lot more attention, because for better or for worse, women's skating is what drives spectator interest. I mean, ice dance in this country has been great, and more power to the Shibatanis and Chalk and Bates for doing what they did at Worlds, but men's skating, when we've had a spectacular skater, an Evan or a Brian Boitano or a Scott Hamilton or a Todd Eldridge or any number of great skaters, get some attention. But people want to see the United States win a medal in women's skating. So it'll be, I was looking, I'm going to have to look down here a little bit. I was looking to see what happens next year in terms of juniors, and only one of the 6 finishers, the top 6 placers, are actually only one of the 6 girls who qualified for the Junior Grand Prix is age eligible for the Senior Grand Prix next year, which means they're not age eligible for the Worlds next year either. So you won't see Surskaya or I think the only one is, I'm going to look down quickly, is Miyahara is the only one who is age eligible next year. So you won't see that that sort of unusual contender pop up.
Like a Medvedeva, yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't think, when there's nobody out there right now that you can see. One of the things that's interesting to me looking into the future of U.S. figure skating is that I looked this up. I think I sent you an email about it. It was since you competed in what, I forget what year it was the last time that there were that the entire team was 20 somethings. I mean, now I understand that Paulina Edmonds got knocked off and Mariah took that place, but she was, after all, fourth at nationals. Right now, I don't see, it's great that, women's skating has allowed skaters to stay in it longer. There's more money, there's more opportunity. There are fewer opportunities as a pro skater, so they're staying in for different reasons. But I don't see anybody behind those two right now. I made a list of going through this. Ashley Kane, who's never been a factor as a senior after she won a silver medal in juniors in 2012. Mariah Bell, you keep thinking maybe, but she was 6th in 2015 at senior nationals, 11th this year. Karen Chen, I never quite understand how, if boots are so important to you, how could you have boot problems all year long? I've been mystified about this for as long as I've covered skating, Jenny. She goes from 3rd last year to a totally non-contending 8th, and then she goes on to 4 continents and finishes 12th. Amber Glenn, since she won the U.S. Junior Championship, she was hurt some of this year. She was 13th in 2015. Courtney Hicks, I think, what we've seen from her. Hannah Miller, again, not that made any splash in senior. Tyler Pierce looks like, she was 5th and 6th, 5th at national, 6th at the World Juniors. She of this group, I think, and Vivian Lee, we don't know yet. I mean, clearly she get 2 Junior Grand Prix medals this year, but there's not somebody who, if you look at the Russians, Surskaya and Fedchkina and some of them, I mean, you see those people and you say they look like contenders. Actually, you look at Surskaya, she almost looks like a contender now. So the question is, when Gracie, if I presume Ashley will definitely stop competing after 2018, but you never know. When Ashley and Gracie cycle out, is there somebody there? I don't see somebody obvious right now. And we know that there are 3 or 4 great young Japanese women, and the next 3 or 4 great Russian women are going to be there. So,
well,
many of those up and comers come from, obviously very respected, venerable coaches. And other than Frank and Raphael, there really aren't coaches in the U.S. who have produced medalists on the world stage in singles. So how much of it do you see as a coaching talent problem in the U.S. of coaches who have the experience, the knowledge base, to really do the entire package? Because Frank doesn't have any juniors, and now it really looks to Raphael. So do you expect a lot of skaters to be moving to Raphael within the next few years?
I just saw, Raphael's talked about this before, and I just saw a long interview he did with, I believe, Golden Skate. Raphael would like to be a training center. Raphael would like to have the Raphael Training Center. And, there's always been the talk, would a gymnastics arrangement work? And Jenny, you skated. I mean, would you agree to go to a Marta Caroli type situation if you were a skater or not?
I mean, she's incredibly scary. So no, I don't think that it's good to have one person have so much power in any sport.
So, but that's what what Raphael is saying is that and Raphael's complains now that the rink is crowded with junior skaters and skaters that they need to not junior skaters, free public skaters. I'm sorry,
yes.
People that they need to keep the rink afloat to make money, and he would like to have a situation like in Russia where the rink is basically for those elite skaters for a big chunk of the day. So, I don't know. Clearly Raphael has done really well with Ashley. He's done pretty well with Adam. You can say what you want about Adam. I still think that Adam is never going to be a world or Olympic medalist. He skated as well as he can, and that's what Adam has done. So, is he the only answer? I don't know. The fact Raphael, I guess, is 57. Frank Carroll is 74 or 5 now. Tom Zakrajcik has had people jump up very high nationally, but never make the big jump internationally. That's the question. Where's the young coach? Will Corey Aids' group? Will there be some that's of course that's Mariah Bell and Jason. I guess Jason skated respectably at the Challenge Cup for someone who hadn't really skated in competition since November. So that's a good question, Dave. I mean, I don't know where the next coach who's going to produce these skaters is. And the other question that's always in the back of your mind is how long will Russia's commitment to this last? I mean, they had a huge incentive with the Sochi Games after having such a horrible washout in the 2010 Olympics. Now, of course, they have success. And so people will say, well, why should we, we should keep feeding this. Look at the success we've had. And I think it's likely that they will. And, well, again, you've got now the second wave of terrific young Japanese skaters involved. It's going to be hard for the United States to contend. And I'm throwing it in the immediate future. Next year, Carolina Costner comes back. I mean, I don't know whether I felt bad for Mao. I loved those programs that she just couldn't pull it off. I wonder whether that's the end. But it's the question of where the talent gets developed if you don't have a central system. Maybe what that Marta Karolyi thing needs to be done on the junior level as opposed to the senior level. And there's going to have to be some egos subjugated. I mean, in gymnastics, those individual coaches subjugate their egos to let their athletes go to Marta for it's not every day, but there's a big period of time where they go there. And basically there's a philosophy, if not an exact, not everybody doing, for instance, the triple Lutz the same way, but there's not an exact way to do a tumbling pass or something on the beam or something on the bars. There's a competitive philosophy that permeates everything. So, Raphael skaters have done well competitively. Frank skaters have done well competitively. And I think I may have mentioned this before, that Frank told me in the past. He said, if you look at pure talent, neither Michelle nor Evan was the most talented skater out there, but they were just lethal competitors. When you put them, when they were in front of judges, they rarely screwed up big time.
But I also think in knowing them, and definitely knowing Evan well, that's unique to those individuals. They had a skill that you can't teach. That's just who they are. And I think,
you're right, it is who they are. But maybe, can you somehow figure out what it was that made them who they are, and maybe instill that competitive spirit into some other skaters? Because, Lord knows there have been talented skaters in and out. And Gracie right now, sadly enough, is the greatest example of that. People talk about Sasha, but Sasha, she may never have won the gold medal, but she won a lot of medals. Mm-hmm. Sasha had, she won silver medal in Worlds, bronze medal in Worlds, silver medal in the Olympics. So yeah, it's an interesting problem.
Well, let's transition and talk about some of the men, because Hanyu doing another phenomenal short program here, but yet again, not able to deliver in the long program. When we talk about him beating all of these world records, but does this kind of taint or tarnish his legacy in the sport that 2 years in a row he was unable to deliver at Worlds?
Well, he is, however, still 2 years in a row silver medalist. He didn't all of a sudden finish fourth. Sure. I was disappointed. I wanted to see live what we'd all seen from NHK and what we saw at the Grand Prix final. Does that, it means that he's in a place that I don't think he expected to be in. He's got to all of a sudden now put a big performance together next year leading into the Olympics. What's interesting here is that this arrangement with spending relatively little time with Brian Orser after, say, the end of November until the Worlds, that was not the case in the Olympic year. It has been the case in the last 2 years, and it's interesting that, Yuzu's best results have been closer to the time that he was training full-time at the cricket club. And the further away he's gotten, the more mistakes he's made. What he did in those two competitions was almost superhuman. And, we all wanted him to do it again because it just would have been great to see. And he did in the short program. Right now he has to go out. I think it'll be important for him to skate a nearly perfect long program at Worlds next year, to give him the confidence that he can do it. Don't forget, Worlds Olympics, his long program was bad, and 2 Worlds in a row that his long program has been bad. So right now he looks like a short program skater, except at those Grand Prix when we've seen something else.
Well, you cover a lot of sports, so I'm curious about this. We didn't see him compete since Japanese Nationals, which were in December. Worlds are the last week of March, beginning of April. Is that frequent in other sports that you see a top contender not compete for 3 months before? I mean, did he kind of lose his competitive rhythm in that amount of time?
It's, you could clearly make that argument. I mean, the fact was that, well, he didn't get back to the cricket club until the end of February, which meant that there was a long stretch from the early January was Japanese Nationals, or late December.
Late December. Yeah.
It was a long stretch of kind of being out there on his own in that rink that they essentially closed down for him in Sendai. So, I mean, it seems like one of the things that's made the Javi and Yuzu thing work is the competition between the two of them, and maybe he thrives more even with more competition in practice. Even if you and clearly, what's really interesting, if you look, let's go back to a year ago and look at Tuktamasheva, who skated a competition every 7.5 minutes. And that worked really well for her, particularly because she was trying to reestablish herself as a factor in the sport. But clearly, it's a long time to go. Basically, you're right. 3 months, just a hair under 3 months that he went without a competition. I would say that they will likely convince him that 4 continents would be a good idea next year, or something, or just go to some minor competition, of which there are now plenty, if you want to do that. But I mean, 4 continents. I don't even know where 4 continents is next year, but 4 continents is clearly at least basically on his side of the world if he's back training in Japan.
Now, prior to Worlds, there was a lot of talk about Javier basically thinking that he was the second best guy and that he'd have to capitalize on Yuzu's mistakes. But he has been able to stand up the last 2 seasons when Yuzu hasn't. How significant is that he now has this ability to deliver? I mean, you talked about Evan and Michelle being lethal in competition. Javier has now been able to do it at Worlds. Does he become a more significant contender in your eyes as you look towards 2018?
Absolutely, and think of what he did in the Grand Prix final after Yuzu did that just ridiculous performance. He said, so that's in big competitions now. He had a good free skate in the European Championships. He had a very good free skate in that Grand Prix final, just not quite good enough. And he had a free skate at Worlds that I think might have won on its own merit. I mean, that would have been really interesting. We'll never know, but it would be really interesting to see because, I mean, on the whole, whatever you want to call the whole second mark, but what he gave you was so unbelievable. And then you think there are also 3 quadruple jumps and 2 triple axels in that. I mean, so yeah. I think you're right, Dave. I think Javi has now proved that. First of all, everybody always talks about how much harder it is to defend a title than win the first one. And he may have gotten a little bit of the pressure relieved by the fact that everybody thought that Yuzu was such an overwhelming favorite. But in his mind, he wanted to win another world title. So he skated great. So now he has proved that he can do this under great pressure and a great spotlight.
Well, Jin Boyang, he landed 4 quads and a trip to the podium despite some weak skating skills. Do you think he's being over-rewarded because of that technical aspect of his skating?
I think that was not great skating by any stretch of the imagination. He wound up 3rd because other people opened the door for him, basically. I think that it was a fairly weak performance. The quad, even this, when you watch Yuzu do his 3 quads, and you watch Javi do his 3, you don't think that they're spending the entire time setting up quads. And you do get the feeling with Jin that he was doing the entire time setting up quads. I think that Jin prospered by the fact that nobody else was there to steal that place away from him. I'm trying to remember. I can't even, right now, I'm having a problem remembering who finished 4th. Patrick
Koleata.
Koleata,
right?
4th or 5th.
He was 4th,
Yeah, and then so Patrick Chen obviously had a horrible free skate. And that opened the door. And Koleata was on his way up. And I'm trying to remember who the other person in the top 6 was, but it's
Adam.
Adam was 6th, right? Yeah. But he was a non-contending 6th. I mean, no, what I'm saying is that he was not in that mix for a medal.
Yeah.
The way that Chen would have, Chen obviously when you see the score, the ridiculous. Still ridiculously high component scores. Chen got that. Clearly, he was going to finish 3rd with an even respectable free skate, but what he did was not respectable at all. Speaking of Canadians, we just learned overnight that Nam is leaving and going to work with Paulina's coach David Glynn in San Jose. You asked me this before, and I think I gave the wrong answer now that I look back at it. You asked me whether it'd be a good idea for Nam to go to Worlds. And I said, why not? Well, clearly, I didn't know that he was not at all ready to skate. So I think this going to Worlds hurt him a great deal, both personally, psychologically, and in the minds of people judging him. I mean, wow, that was just unbelievable. When you think it was interesting, the cricket club, you had Javi, obviously brilliant, Yuzu brilliant in one program, Gabriel Daleman had a great Worlds. And yet, Nam didn't. Sonia Lafuente. I mean, she's not. I would have thought she might have made it into the final 24. Didn't. The other Javi, I think, made it into the final 24, so that wasn't so bad. But I guess that Nam figured that the time to make a change was now. I don't know. He's clearly in some kind of relationship with Paulina Edmonds, so did he let his heart or his skating determine? But it can't. If you're going to make the change, make it 2 years before the Olympics so you can adapt to a new system and whatever. But yeah, I mean, you guys were clearly on the right track where you thought Nam had more to risk going to Worlds. I didn't think he had that much to risk, but boy, he was absolutely unprepared to. The same problems that have plagued him all season were like multiplied by 10 million%. But the good thing about the new judging system is that if he goes out and skates lights out on his first senior Grand Prix next year, people will realize, oh yeah, this is the Nam we remembered from 2 years ago, and he'll get back there. But the question is, how much of a mental block is this now, knowing that he was an utter disaster?
Well, talking about mental blocks, we do need to discuss Dennis Chen, because he was one of the names that we had in the mix for the podium, definitely top 5. What do you think about his future at this point? He did a great short program at the event this past weekend, but it's so hard to watch him when he's so talented, but he can't put it together under pressure.
Well, apparently 90% of the erratic skating is related to injuries. You hear a litany of injuries with Dennis all the time. And since the unbelievably great performance at the London, Ontario Worlds, which he should have won, he's been a very erratic skater. So, I mean, it's been constantly one good program, one bad program, one good program, one bad program. He's a beautiful skater, and he can do quads when he's able to do them. So, but I think he's kind of taken him in your mind now. He's taken that inconsistent skating. You're kind of, when this comes to Worlds next year, when we think about who we're going to call medalists, you're not as likely to put Dennis in that mix now because of what the problem this year. But again, maybe he gets over the injuries. Maybe he has a great Grand Prix season. Don't forget, he was awful at Skate America. He was really awful. I wondered why he even showed up. If you're going to put that stuff out there, withdraw with an injury. And then he struggled elsewhere. I mean, remember we talked about that little competition he did in Luxembourg right before Worlds, in which, again, he fell 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, I mean, he's now in a different place than Nam because he didn't implode, but he's also older than Nam, and he's had a history now of injuries for 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, I guess it proves that you can't, you got to train. And he's apparently had lots of problems finding time to train.
Well, speaking of training, Patrick Chan said that he wasn't sure if he was going to even continue if he didn't do well at Worlds. He wound up not doing well, but it does sound like he will continue. Having an up and down season, do you think he still has what it takes to compete with Hanyu and Javier?
Hanyu at his best and Javier at their best now have moved into another league from him. Mm-hmm. The extra quadruple jumps their technical score is going to be so high if they land them all that Patrick Chen is basically playing for the bronze medal now. Which is not a horrible thing, enough position to be in. But yeah, I mean, he's not the same. He can't win on his own the way he could win on his own before. So if he wants to keep skating, he's still a great skater to watch when he's on. But did he ever put together 2 programs all season?
No.
So. I mean, even come close to putting together 2 programs all season. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. And then, of course, the other Canadian coming back. We've got Tessa and Scott coming back, and I presume that they will fly right back into the mix. Papadakis and Cicerone were brilliant at Worlds. I love their skating. I didn't love their program. It was funny. I thought the quality of their skating was spectacular, and the program kind of left me yawning, despite the fact the skating was so gorgeous. So, and I guess I can't imagine that Merrill and Charlie are coming back, but they haven't ruled it out. So, you never know what might happen in ice.
Well, let's talk about the American men really briefly, because 6th and 8th, pretty good here. But looking ahead to 2018, in your opinion, will we contend for any sort of podium finish? You talked about Adam potentially never making that podium. Thoughts on Max? And then we saw Jason do pretty well this past weekend. And then what do you think about Nathan Chen and his future?
Well, obviously Nathan Chen is the future, and if he can stay healthy. I saw, Nathan was hurt last year and this year. I mean, this year, yes, he did it in an exhibition, and it looks like stupid thing. Why did you do the quad in an exhibition? But that could have happened in practice as well. So, I mean, Nathan looks like the future, as well as Vincent Zhao. I think by the 2018 Olympics, he could even be in the mix for a spot on that Olympic team. It's going to, for a U.S. man to contend, it's going to be some kid coming up through juniors who no longer is afraid of trying multiple quads. And, people will say, well, yeah, they're all going to get injured and whatever. But, Hanyu's had some horrible crashes. He hasn't been injured. Javi does a million quads. He hasn't been injured. Jin does a million quads. So far as we know, he hasn't been injured. So that the argument that, they're risking too much doing them at an early age, that's just not going to, if the sport keeps going the way it's going now, it's going to take a Nathan Chen kind of skater. I mean, as I said before Worlds, I think I can't see Jason Brown contending if he can't land triple axels consistently, let alone, I mean, never a quad, and he can't even do the triple axels consistently. So he's a beautiful skater, but you're just light years behind. Look at I forget what competition I was talking about earlier before Worlds, where Patrick was like 26 points behind Yuzu in technical scores. I mean, think about that, 26 points. You're never going to overcome that. And that's where Jason is, unfortunately. One or two triple axels, both of which you hold your breath on, and so far never a quad. So, I think that the future for the U.S. men is pretty good. If with Vincent and with Nathan, if they can stay healthy, I don't see, let's see if they can get the third place back for the Olympic Games. I mean, right now that would be a big deal. Everybody was so excited, 6th, 8th, and 10th, and I'm thinking that's still 2 places, people. Why would you get excited over 6th, 8th, and 10th? Grant had a horrible beginning and then came back and did a really nice free skate, and it's something he'll remember the rest of his life, as well he should, because great moment for him in his career. But 6th, 8th, and 10th, again, Max, I think we've seen what Max can do, and it just doesn't. The judges don't think that's going to be medal worthy. So.
Yeah, I definitely think that was the best our men could have performed at Worlds. I don't think that they could have done any better, and it is interesting that, while you could say that they did their best, and that's something to be proud of, they were not contenders. I would say that Gracie's old coach, Alex Arashev, does coach Tomoki Hiwatashi. We have seen him land quads and triple axels. He did win a bronze medal.
He was the last minute. He was the addition to Junior Worlds when Nathan got hurt. He's actually trains right in my area. So, I forgot about him. So, but he fits into this pattern. I see that there will be a next generation, barring injuries. Those guys should all be contenders. I mean, I thought that Nathan Chen's overall skating level at nationals, I thought he was way above Jin in terms of putting a program together. So if Jin can do that with 4 quads, and Nathan with 4 quads and a program that looked a lot better, I think Nathan's a real serious medal contender. Certainly for 2022 if he can stay healthy, and I think Nathan could even be a medal contender by 2018. Given one of those occasions where people make mistakes. I mean, again, we're going to look at Kolyatic. Can he repeat that performance? I mean, it was a unbelievably great performance, and he looked so confident on the ice. But I mean, he fits into this mix now too, going forward. Right now you could easily see him stepping past Patrick Chen if he can do that again next year.
Well, we expected to see the Russian pairs do well at the Worlds, and they did not really factor in being fourth, fifth, and sixth. So, what did you make it of their performance at Worlds? What happened, and do you expect Velozar and Trenkov to continue?
Well, the only one I must admit, the one I paid the most attention to was Voloshyazar and Trankov, and they were certainly underwhelming. It seemed that they thought that uh, they didn't have enough time to get ready for this, to get back and to get ready and be fully ready for it. I think they're going to continue. They were talking about go on for another year and then maybe have a child but I think certainly I think they'll give it one more try. And to be perfectly honest, I did not pay that much attention to the other two Russian pairs this year. I was so blown away. And help me, what was the name of the Chinese pair that won the short program?
Sui and Han.
Yeah, I was so blown away by that short program. It was so cool to see. And I guess the other two pairs have since Worlds have changed partners,
Yeah,
right?
And Sui is headed for surgery. She had a rough ankle or Achilles injury that she skated through all year, and there were reports last night that she was going to need surgery for that.
So I mean, Duhamel and Radford clearly are the class of that field right now. I mean, they've done it now 2 years in a row. It's and I thought both of their skates were really good. The long program was terrific. So, and again, the U.S. pairs are totally non-contenders. They, for all Alexa and Chris can do in whatever, in warm-ups and practices and whatever, they completely fall apart in competition. So, yeah, I mean, they'll be. Clearly, I still think if they can only somehow get a sixth or a fifth and get to that level where they actually are in the mix on the global level, maybe somehow maybe they can take the next step. But I don't think I think you've seen the best of them, and I don't know who's on the line. I haven't paid much attention to U.S. junior pairs, so.
Well, it just seemed like Alexa and Chris almost spooked themselves this season, that they didn't expect to do so well so soon, and then after that tough time at the Grand Prix final in the long program, it's just, I mean, they came back at 4 continents, but it seems like they don't quite see themselves as one of those top team really deep down.
Well, if you looked at their short program at Worlds, if they hadn't made the mistake on the element, they would have been right there. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, all of a sudden you went from that very encouraging moment. Yeah, I mean, yes, they made the mistake on the element, and you can't do that. But what that showed you is that they could be right there. And then they fell apart in the free skate again. So
it was tough to watch. Well, talking about top American teams, though, the Shibutanis have really emerged as the top U.S. ice dance team. How do you compare their skating to the French?
The French are much more refined. It was interesting. I thought that Maya and Alex skated that free skate a lot better at nationals. There was a lot more emotion. It just grabbed me a lot more. I was actually underwhelmed not by the skating, but I was just underwhelmed by the whole feeling I got from the performance. Yeah, I think that the French are definitively at a higher level. Just the edging, the movement, the positions. If right now they would be one, and and Maya and Alex, who are second in the world, would be like 3 in my mind. There's a gap between them, and then to Chalk and Bates, and then but then now of course you throw the Canadians back in there, and there's no reason to suspect that they won't come back as good as they were. I mean, it was a great turner. You think of Maya and Alex, and I understand that weird things happened when they won that bronze medal in 2011, but think of they kept getting buried and buried and buried, and they had the psychological stamina to keep at it and just keep skating and to improve. And because I thought that program at Nationals was one of the great moments I've seen in ice dance. It was just terrific stuff.
Well, we know that you're a music aficionado, and Charlie White was very vocal to us about his disapproval of hip-hop being introduced to ice dance next season. Is this a bad move for the sport, and are you cringing in advance?
I'm probably cringing a little bit in advance, since I'm not a big hip-hop fan myself, even though there's a lot of hip-hop that I...
You don't twerk, Phil? There's no twerking? No?
You don't want to see that. No. One time my twerk will be on the back of my bicycle if I'm leaning forward.
We like you in your spandex, though.
So anyway, The choices of music. The one good thing about hip hop, we won't have heard it before. Thank God. I mean, that's what's the cool thing about the Coldplay song that Alex Amaya used. You haven't heard that a lot in figure skating. So to get out of that rut of all of the old war horses, that's a good thing. Let's see what happens. I mean, I'm open. I'm open. I refer to myself at times as a musical garbage disposal. I'll basically listen to anything and give it a chance.
Well, one of the things we know that you have been tracking is that the 2018 Olympics will be held in the morning. So what does this mean for the skaters? I know that in Beijing they held many events in the morning, and what were the implications there?
Well, the big event held in the morning in Beijing was swimming because NBC wanted swimming in prime time in the United States, and they all got used to it. I mean, the difference was that in swimming, you swim the trials the night before. You were going to be swimming in the morning anyway. It was just you were swimming finals in the morning as opposed to trials in the morning. So, and going back to Seoul, much of the track and field was in the morning at a time when there were a lot of trials. So, for those athletes, I don't think the adjustment is going to be as big. The weird thing about figure skating is that there is that final practice session the morning of the final. So, I'm trying to remember. Presumably, that thing is going to start at 6 a.m. for the skaters 24 through 19 or 18, and my math is terrible. Mm-hmm. And it means that the people it takes essentially 3 hours to do a 24 skater competition, so they're going to be on the ice at 1 in the afternoon, and so therefore they'll be probably doing their final practice around 9:30 or 10. So I don't think it's as bad as it looked initially because, is it horrible to get up at for 9:30 or 10? I mean, a lot of skaters get up for 9:30 or 10 practice when they're in their home rink. It'll just be a matter. They've got, as Ashley and Gracie both said, actually Gracie loved the idea. Because she said, I'm a much better skater in the morning. By the end of the day, if you're sorry, so in Boston, the final group went on, at about 10:05 or 10:10 or something like that. That's a lot of hanging around. They did that morning practice, which was over when? I'm trying to remember. It was ending just when I got to the rink that day. It was probably just after noon. So you've got 9 hours of hanging around until you wind up competing again. And she loved the fact that it was going to be, that weight would be compressed. What I would think, U.S. figure skating never answered this question. What would you go ahead and you wouldn't obviously for TV reasons, but would you try to do some competition where they tried it out, or even that silly international competition? I'm sorry, silly, but the one in Salt Lake City. Would you try it out there? I mean, and then let anybody who wants to, maybe some of the better skaters will show up for that just to experience what it's like to get on the ice in the morning. I mean, I think Ashley is not a morning person the way Gracie is, and she will have to, for a certain period of time, you're going to have to adjust your schedule, and you're going to, even if you don't, at the Olympics, the practices are so weird. A lot of them have to wake up really early for practices. But I think what you'll make sure is that even on the days when you're not don't have to wake up for a 10 a.m. practice, you'll probably wake yourself up and, get that first cup of coffee at 7 a.m. I mean, Gracie was funny. She said, it'll be great because we'll go into the cafeteria and nobody will be there. You won't have to wait in any lines for anything. So, I mean, they'll deal with it. The return is obviously that it'll be in prime time in the United States. It's a 15-hour time difference to Korea at that point, so it'll all be in prime. It'll end around midnight in New York, but 9 p.m. in Los Angeles, so there'll be more exposure. I actually was sort of surprised that NBC thought it was important enough to ask for that, and one of my sources on that story told me that amazingly enough there was no pushback at all in Europe. Because they're the ones who are getting the short end of the stick on this. That's going to be, it'll be in the middle of the night in all over Europe, and even the Japanese it's going to be in the morning in Japan, which means if it's a work day, you're going to have to rearrange your life a little bit to watch that. And where's the sport more popular? And apparently there wasn't enough pushback from the Japanese to stop it. So.
Now, when David Wilson was on this show with us, he remarked that he was disappointed that Yoonok Kim doesn't really have a role in the sport at all. How important is it that she insert herself into the sport somewhat heading into the Olympic Games?
Well, she had a role with the Pyeongchang bid, and I think she'll have a bigger. She's had a role with the youthful Olympic Games. I think that you'll see a lot more of her, but I don't think that it's necessary. I don't think that it's necessary to drum up interest for her to have that bigger role. I mean, I think that arena will be filled in Pyeongchang anyway, and particularly with so close to Japan. I mean, Japanese fans will be fighting each other for tickets. So it'd be nice. I mean, she's a great skater and a great ambassador, and it'd be great just to see her out there again. One of the things that I put that little picture of Michelle and I on Facebook. And I wrote about this in Sochi when I was staying in the same hotel with all the NBC people, many of whom were former figure skater and including champions. One of the great things about the sport is that past champions are so accessible to everybody, to those of us in the media, to fans, to everybody, and just having them around and people to see, what a lot of these men and women have grown up to be, very successful in either continuing in skating or out of skating. I think it's great. And so I think, Yuna holds a special position in the sport and will always hold that position in the sport. And sure, it'd be great to see her around and maybe show up at Worlds next year and do some interviews and get everybody excited about the possibility of, what's going to happen in Pyeongchang the year after that.
I expect her to be in the opening ceremonies. I'm saying she's going to do an Ina Bauer in the center of it, money on it, like Kristi Yamaguchi in 2002.
That'd be fantastic. I mean, why not? Right? Maybe she'll even do the double axel out of the spread eagle the way she always did.
Yeah. Well, you're known for following the workings of the ISU. So what are the key dates for the ISU elections coming up? We're still hearing that DDA is the leading contender. There's been some talk that there may be a U.S. contender as well.
Well, I don't know of any U.S. contender right now. There's a speed skater from the Netherlands. There's Didier. The Congress is sometime in June, correct? I haven't got the dates strong in my head. To me, it boggles the imagination that they could elect a man who should have been thrown out of the sport for life. And he's not a dislikable person, but what he did is lifetime suspension, basically. I don't know whether any of you listened to Radiolab in New York.
Yes.
Did that interesting piece. I actually gave them a lot of background on that piece. And just the way everybody knew that he had made up some of those stories, but the way he bragged about lying, I found just unbelievable. There was
no remorse. There was no remorse at all.
Well, no, there was no remorse. He was celebrating the lies that they created to make Surya a more appealing character to the media. I understand the purpose of what he did. But, somehow put that in the context, we needed a boost for figure skating in France at that point. So we embellished the story a little bit. I wish I didn't have to do that and I'll never do it again. But I mean,
Will you though? It's one of those things. Do you really think he's never going to do it again?
The sources on the Radiolab story were hilarious, though. They had Marie Lagagne come out at the end
Tanya
of that episode.
Harding?
And didn't mention without mentioning at all what her role had been.
Just that she's had some controversy in the sport. Yeah. I think they slipped that in, just really.
Yeah. It was. I thought that was anyway. But that's Didier, and that's that whole side of Didier. And I think I may have said before is that he the French Federation, which is all ice sports, it's this bizarre amalgam of bobsled and luge and curling and figure skating and speed skating. They've been living from hand to mouth during his presidency. They were near bankrupt a million times. I mean, he was not a great administrator. Somebody actually threw out a interesting scenario to me at Worlds. They said Katarina Witt should be the new president of the ISU. She's smart. Nobody has a bigger image in the sport. And she would, she wouldn't have to be in the office every day running stuff. She'd hire 2 or 3 great administrators, but the image of the sport would be, as you're talking about Yuna in Korea, the image of the sport would be Katarina Witt. That would be an unbelievable thing to, and she's been a successful business person with the stuff that she's done in Germany. They're just more of the same old, same old. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they will have. What the shred of credibility they have left is gone if they elect Didier. I just can't imagine it. I also don't think that there's anybody who's positioned themselves strongly enough in the United States to be the candidate, and the United States is, the record, the competitive record is not going to help anybody. Not that France's competitive record is anything to write home about, but yeah, that'll be an interesting situation.
Well, as we look ahead to the Summer Olympics, Phil, what sports will you be covering?
Well, I'm going there to work for the U.S. Olympic Committee, and I am going to write one story a day on any subject I want. So I'm going to actually go to the Olympic Games as opposed to, I often joked about the Lillehammer Games. All I saw was Tanya and Nancy. If there wasn't Olympic Games going on around me, I had no idea that it was going on. So this will be fun. I mean, I'm going to just pick a story every day. One of the early ones will be Gwen Jorgensen, the great triathlete, trying to become the first U.S. Triathlete to win a medal in the Olympics after she's utterly dominated the world circuit the last couple of years. And, some of Phelps and Katie Ledecky and some of the stories of Usain Bolt, who's not a U.S. athlete, there's some great stories in wrestling. The U.S. women's 8 has won every major medal for the last 10 years. So I'm going to have some fun. I'm actually going to go to the Olympic Games as opposed to covering one sport.
We're very excited to read all of your articles and to follow your coverage. Thank you for coming on today and talking with us and going back and reliving the season.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope the season ended in a great way, and hopefully next season will start in a great way and end in an even better way. I mean, I'd love to see the sport get back into a little more of the public consciousness, and this was a good step forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Phil, and we look forward to speaking with you next season.
All right, thanks. If you see a slow old man on a bicycle coming by, you'll know it'll be me.
We'll give you a wave.
Yes.